Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give people just a couple of moments to settle in. Hello from all of us here at ZingTrain. Lots of faces on our webinar this morning. It's going to be very fun. Lots of people and personalities to meet. Just a couple more moments, and then we will kick things off. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. This is our trainer roundtable and Ask Us Anything. My name is Katie Alexander. I am ZingTrain's community builder, and I'm going to be your host today, wrangling all of our trainers together for an hour of conversation. I'm thrilled to be here alongside all of them. In no particular order, we have Dr. Jennifer Yim, Ariana Tejas-Leon, Elnian Gilbert, Timo Anderson, Katie Frank, and Joni Hales. They're all trainers here at Zingerman's Training. We also have Mara Ferguson, our keynote liaison, and Alice Rolfchin, our digital media manager. They are behind the scenes to monitor the chat and questions that you have throughout the hour. We are all coming to you live from Michigan. Most of us are in Ann Arbor. Timo is in Michigan, but I'm actually not sure what city. You can let us know in a moment. We would love to hear where all of you are tuning in from. If you want to drop your location in the chat, it's just fun for us and all the participants to see where we're all coming to together in the world. And if you have any neighbors, be sure to say hi if you notice anyone. We're going to dive into the good stuff very soon. I just have a couple of housekeeping things to address. As far as the format of today, we're going to have all of our trainers introduce themselves, and then I'll be asking about a dozen questions that were brought forth by all of you when you registered for the webinar. We received an astounding number of questions and a huge diversity of them. So we have elevated what we questions that emerged as themes, and I'll be pulling them in just a random order, addressing them to different trainers. We are sorry we can't get to every single question, but know that you have inspired us massively, and some of them may just show up as future content in our webinars, in social, and in blog posts. We'll also be leaving a little bit of time for additional questions that come up on the content throughout the hour. And so while you're listening, feel free to submit those questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's also closed captioning available during today's presentation. And if you'd like to turn that on, Alice is going to drop the details in the chat. You can find the closed captioning button also at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The last item of business is that we are recording this conversation because we would like to send it out to you in the next day or two. And it will also be posted on our website. So look out for, you will receive an email with it since you are here, but it also lives in the resources tab on our zingtrain.com website, which has all sorts of other webinars and free resources for you to check out too. That is housekeeping. So I am going to kick things off to Katie Frank, the managing partner and a trainer here at ZingTrain, to get us started. And for people who are new, we just want to give a really quick overview of like who we are. So take it away, Katie.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. It's wonderful to be here with you all. Thank you for tuning in and giving us an hour of your time. A quick overview of ZingTrain. So I'm Katie Frank, the current managing partner of ZingTrain, and ZingTrain started in 1994 from Maggie Bayless. She read our co-founder's vision of 2009, Ari and Paul, our co-founders, and it was to grow a community of businesses in Ann Arbor. And she thought, if we're going to grow to all these businesses, we should do some formalized training for all those to make sure we have consistent service and great food. And ZingTrain was born in the summer of 1994. So in a couple of years, we'll celebrate our 30th anniversary. Maggie retired from her managing partner role in July of 2020, and I became a partner in 2018 after a stint at the Bakehouse for 6.5 years, and then I was a trainer in 2011 and then became a partner in 2018. So We offer seminars and workshops here in Ann Arbor. We also have a lot of virtual workshops. We host webinars, and we love working with clients at their client location or folks to bring their team here to Ann Arbor. So I don't want to take away from a number of questions, but wanted to give a little framing. We are one of 10 businesses here in the Zingerman's community of businesses now, and are excited to be here with you all to share a little more about what life is like on the road and working with clients and so forth. I'll give a quick intro, then I'm going to turn things over to Joni, and all of the trainers are going to introduce themselves. So Katie Frank, I've been in the organization, it'll be 17 years in December, 6.5 years at the Bakehouse and as a retail manager, and then at Zing Train next month, it'll be 11 years. One highlight from the last year, I will say, having the chance to help an organization roll out a vision that they've been working on for a number of months with their staff was a real highlight this past year. I'm going to turn things over to Joni, who will continue on the path for introductions.
Thank you, Katie. My name's Joni Heels, also a trainer here at Zing Train. I've worked in the organization for just over 19 years, 13 years at the Roadhouse and 6 years here at Zing Train. A memorable moment for me, we launched a virtual open book management implementation series that a number of clients have gone through. And one in particular is a chocolate maker. And about a month after we ended the training, he wrote and said, wow, this is really working. Like I can actually see the team getting excited about it. And that was hugely rewarding and just certainly a highlight of the year. So it was great to get that email. And I'll turn things over to Timo.
Thanks, Joni. My name is Timo Anderson. I'm a trainer here and been here now 8.5 years. I came directly to Zingerman's training from the nonprofit world. And so was doing that beforehand, but I've been in the community businesses now for 8.5 years. Highlight for me has really, it's actually where I am. So Katie, to answer your earlier question, I'm in Grosse Pointe, Michigan today, and it's working with a business. And we've been working for about a year on doing passports, and they have a couple of them that are really quite amazing. They not only got the passports fully installed for frontline staff, but they have all of the SOPs and documentation to support all of the learning along the way. And this has been a huge kind of traction step that we've gotten on, and it's been really amazing to watch it kind of take traction and now work in the other departments that I'm working in. So been very exciting work. And I'll turn it over to Elnian.
Thank you, Timo. I'm Elnian Gilbert. I am also a trainer here at Zing Train. I've been at the part of the ZCOP for 16 months 16 years next month. And I got my start at our mail order business in the holiday season, selling great food over the phone. I've been at Zing Train in a number of different capacities starting in February of 2007. One of my most memorable experiences from the past year was when Timo and I returned to Anchorage, Alaska, to lead 3 days of training for a really fabulous group of businesses that we worked with first in October 2019. Thankfully, they made it all through. They made it all the way through. And it was really wonderful to be back in person in Anchorage, seeing so many familiar faces and sharing tools and resources to help them continue to thrive. And then I will kick it to Ariana.
Hello, thank you. I have been working at Zingerman's for about 10 years. I started working at the flagship business, Zingerman's Deli, worked there for about 3 years, then came over to Zing Train as a concierge and now as a trainer. And one of my most memorable things was that in February, Elnian and I got to work with a restaurant. They came up here to Ann Arbor and we got to give them lots of training tools and also lots of food. And then in April, Timo and I were able to go down to Atlanta to their restaurant and eat their food and talk more training tools. And now that we do virtual training, we were then able to do a lot of follow-up sessions virtually with their team to implement training and SOPs and kind of bring all of that learning together as a very continuous experience. And Electric Hospitality has been awesome working with you all. Jenny, you're next.
Hello, my name is Jenny Yim. I am Zing Train's newest trainer. Been here about 3 months full-time, but I've worked part-time for a while. And I've been in other Zingerman's businesses, in various capacities and roles for the past 6 years about. I'm mostly here because my children say I'm happier here. So here I am. I'm glad to be here. And I think a memorable moment was realizing this past year that a goal we had set 2 years ago for a 1-day training our goal was to have 50 staff from the organization come in for a diversity and inclusion and equity training. And it was the first event that got canceled in March of 2020. And I was reflecting on big feelings at the time and feeling like what a loss. And then realized because we had modified it to a virtual class and we ran multiple small sessions, we've actually reached over 100 staff. So we more than doubled our goal. And I was like, it wasn't the way we initially planned, but I'm so pleased with the conversations we've had. Thank you so much.
Thank all of you. Yeah, thank you all for the introductions. And now this is where we begin our questioning. Yeah, we have, as you have all heard, a lot of experience within this room at Zingerman's. And so now we're going to dive into a smattering of questions that you all have asked, and I'm going to address things to different trainers. And here we go. Okay. The first question is for Elmian. Someone has asked, what criteria do you use to select trainers in your restaurants? And what does your training the trainer curriculum look like?
All right. So, well, I will say too that this question was about restaurants, but it's a pretty universal question. So I will answer it kind of universally and just know this applies at restaurants and any kind of business. I would say that there are a couple of things that make for a really good trainer. First and foremost, we want them to be competent at their job. And I think we also want them to be an employee in good standing. I mean, in reality, you want them to be able to model what is expected, not just for the training content, but kind of for their overall performance at work. So then we look for someone who's really good at kind of breaking down and explaining the steps of whatever it is that they're doing. So none of the, well, just watch what I'm doing and do that, because that doesn't actually teach people very, very frequently. And not everyone is really good at breaking things down and sharing step-by-step information. I know we choose to tend high performers to train others, but in reality, they don't always make the best trainers. Sometimes someone who more recently came up to speed will be much better at being able to kind of get back into the headspace of the step-by-step recall. And they're often a lot more empathetic to the trainer who is just learning. And in terms of a train the trainer curriculum, we have an internal class that is called, unsurprisingly, Train the Trainer. It shares kind of both our overall approach to training, and then it goes in depth on our 5 steps for effective on-shift training. So the rest of the training curriculum, in addition to that class, it really depends on what someone is teaching. So are they doing primarily on shift or one-on-one training, or are they going to get certified to teach a class? So there's kind of different steps to bring them up to speed either way. But, also just kudos to you for thinking about how to train your trainers and not just throwing them into the pool and expecting them to swim.
Does anyone have anything to add? Elmian knocked it out of the park.
I mean, feel free.
Okay, next question is for Jenny. I find that as some managers get older, they struggle to communicate with younger employees. Do you have any tips or insight?
Oh, yes, this is always a theme. And so thank you for this great question. I actually talked about this in a training yesterday at Zingerman's Mail Order with our warehouse crew. We have staff who really range in how long they've been with the organization and stages of life. And we had some conversations and realized one of the best practices is to provide space for conversations, structure, space, opportunities to practice communication just for that exposure. Because the less exposure we have when we do connect with each other, whether it's to give feedback or to help each other or even just a casual conversation, if it seems, the more exposure we have, the more we can get used to each other and meld with each other's forms of communication. I've heard this from managers also of people being more apt to use texting as opposed to phone calls. not being used to those forms of communication. Some strategies I've heard is just to open up systems for communication. In our diversity work at Zingerman's Mail Order, we recently realized having just email or just paper isn't getting everyone, and really trying to get feedback from people and ask, hey, what are the forms of communication that work well for you? And we discovered that QR codes are a thing. I didn't know what it was, so someone had to explain it to me, and then someone had to help me use my phone to figure out how to actually use it. And that was why we got QR code greens for a lot of younger staff. Whereas our older staff may have been used to other means, either through the internet or paper forms. So really the opportunities to communicate are very helpful. And actually our American Dream Game workshop, which was that training I referenced earlier, that was a one-day training that became multiple small sessions. We've had conversations with managers, frontline staff, and just having those spaces to be able to have conversations makes it more likely for people to be able to connect with each other in the future, whether it's for feedback, positive, constructive, or just connecting with each other. And we've also found that sometimes having staff share visions, write a professional vision and then share it with each other on a shared drive. It's really helps the conversations, not just with managers knowing what staff, what their goals are and helping them achieve them, but the peer aspect is really huge. And I found that really, we found a number of older staff connecting with younger staff and giving them tips, or knowing about, hey, I know someone in the community who might be able to help you with that monster movie makeup dream that you have. And, you know, just things we wouldn't have imagined otherwise. I would love to hear from any other trainers as well, if you have thoughts on this. Okay.
Again, Jenny, I think you knocked it
Tell
out
us
of the park.
yes.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just like such a human approach.
And I'll share an example of recently, we had a younger staff member who said, you know, you have pronoun options on our human resources site, but they seem really limited. And to our HR department, it was really expansive. So we said, you know what, we don't need to make a decision right now. Let's take time to have conversations together, pull multiple resources. And I'll say that my 13-year-old niece really schooled me on the topic. So I've learned that actually having multiple trips to the table can really help with that process.
Yeah. All right. Our next question is also for Jenny. Well, let me skip around and we'll come back to you. We'll do a flipper. This was all randomly generated. Okay, Katie, next question is for you. How do you connect with new hires and employees? Oh, this is similar. How do you connect with new hires and employees that have such different working and communication styles?
Great question. Great question. I'm gonna put something in chat. Many of you have taken our training before. We have something called the Training Compact, and I think we cover this when folks first join the organization. Hopefully we've talked about it in the interviewing process, and then when we hand them their training plan, we talk about it then, and then in all of our internal classes, we talk about the Training Compact. What I like about the Compact is it lays out what we expect as an organization. So the documented clear performance expectations, we communicate that in the training plan. We call it a passport. We want to provide training resources and then recognize and reward performance. Now, that's pretty standard. What's on the right-hand side of our compact, or in the sake of the chat below, what the trainer agrees to, is what we ask the trainees to do. And that's to take responsibility for the effectiveness of their training. We are always going to default to a mode of communication that's going to be most comfortable for us. So like Jenny mentioned, you know, some folks really love email, some want to talk on the phone, some really like in person. We're going to default to what we're most comfortable with. And I think to answer the question about connecting with new hires is asking questions like, how do you like to receive feedback? Is texting the best way to communicate about your schedule if there's a change, or would you prefer email or a phone call? One of the staff that we work with at ZingTrain doesn't really love email, but she is super lightning fast on text message. So part of this is what's expected, and then part of this is let's meet the staff where they are in terms of how they prefer to communicate, and we're going to find a like some equilibrium in the middle that's going to work for both of us. Another critical part about the compact is that we're both 100% responsible for our side. So the organization or the trainer or the manager is responsible for their portion, and then the staff member, we're going to ask them to 100% own their work experience here, which provides a lot of accountability and also helps to take that whole like passive victim mentality out, and more how can I be solutions oriented and try to find a way forward when I'm not sure about something. And there's a lot of work baggage that we all bring from past experiences, and this compact at least says, here's what this is our hope. And the compact by its nature is there's two sides to it. So we both need to participate. So I hope that that answers, if someone has a different communication style, I learn by reading or I learn best by hearing. It's having those conversations if something's not working. But the compact does help to lay out expectations on in all directions. So best way to communicate learning styles is to ask and then listen. But curious if other trainers have other thoughts.
I can share, I've appreciated when someone has come to me with a project or whatever it is and say, hey, Jenny, I heard that you are a visual learner and I brought some printouts for you, and it makes me so happy. And so it's not that I've had to ask every person. It's just kind of, it's not like it's a question. It's an awareness I appreciate.
One thing I'll add also is that knowing that most folks need to be up and moving if they're more kinesthetic learners, we've tried to incorporate different exercises into our training so it's not just lecture. There's a place to write in our workbooks for folks that prefer to doodle. But I think we're having more conversations about how to engage different learning styles in our own training as well as organizationally.
Thank you. All right. The next question is for Joni Hales. I really like this question. Someone has asked, what makes it worth it for me to pull time away from the day-to-day to join one of your training sessions?
Yeah, I think that is a good question. I guess I want to start out just by saying we know that it's a time and resource commitment to step away from the regular work that you all are doing to attend training. And we don't take that lightly. Like, we really appreciate and feel very lucky that so many of you choose to do so on such a regular basis. So thank you. I think that the exact reason why people choose to invest in their own personal development is different for different people. Maybe they want to continue to work their kind of learning muscle. Maybe there's something specific that they want to dive into. I think whatever the reason is, I really believe that our training covers not just theory or concepts on the topics that we talk about, but we go into real practical, like proven to work tools and techniques that people can put to work immediately after the training has ended. And I think a really good test of a good training, can you put what you learned into practice? And I wholeheartedly believe the answer is yes. Also, a lot of our public training, it brings people together from across the country, across the world. People are attending it from different places, different industries. And I think having that diverse group of people learning together, it makes our conversations and it makes the learning just richer. And I think an even better experience, and creates that richer learning experience. So I really think that it's coming with an open mind and being open to taking something new away from it. And I also just want to say, we offer a guarantee. If anyone ever feels like their time with us wasn't well spent and they didn't learn one thing that they can put into use, let us know and we will definitely make it right for you. And going back to the training compact, taking responsibility for what you want to learn in there, I think is also a huge part of it.
I also think excellent answer, Joni. And I think another side of it too is that attending a training, it's that time that you give yourself to actually work on whatever you're working on, instead of just doing the day-to-day work, it's a good like pause, look at the big picture, thinking about like, how are we doing this? Is this the best way? Highlighting what is going really, really well, looking at opportunities. I think when like even at ZingTrain, we'll get caught up in the like, oh, we just need to do the work. And it's really good to take that pause and get that big picture look every once in a while.
And I want to add to what you're saying, Ariana, because I think one of the things that I really, really like about our training is that we almost always include time for people to reflect and think about how they're going to make what they're learning work for them in their own organization. And, you know, we do exercises where you actually have a chance to start, you know, kind of taking that reflection and putting it into action so that you are able to use what you're learning. This is not the kind of training that you get, you know, a binder and then you put it on your shelf and you never reference it again. We want it to be really practical, useful information for people. So we really try to design, even if it's a shorter virtual workshop, you're still getting those concrete takeaways.
We really believe in what we do here. I think it's very, very clear. All right. Next question, let me find my place here, is for Ariana. What is the best tip for the retention of new hires in this market?
Ooh, I think that, well, one of our Zingerman's wide organizational beliefs is that people come to work wanting to do a good job and wanting to know what does success look like. So I think right at the beginning, the more that we can share what the expectations are and like what are the priorities at work, where are the tools and resources to be able to do your job, who do you go to ask for help when you're stuck, and really letting people like kind of paving the way for them to be able to be successful. We've, Katie mentioned passports a moment ago of like, that is our training plan. We actually give it to someone. And I remember that when I started at the deli, when I was handed my passport and told like, here's everything that you need to do in order to be able to be successful at your job, here's the skills and classes to attend. It really was that drive to incorporate me into the culture and how we work, and being able to kind of know that once I was done with that passport, I was going to be a fully functioning employee. That felt really, really good. And knowing what all was involved, the scariest thing for me previously starting a new job is just being able to say like, oh, will I be successful here? Can I do the job? It is intimidating. And I think that that's something that really helps with retention, is inviting people in and then giving them all the resources that they need in order to be successful. And then all the other things that were said before of like knowing how they like to receive feedback, and also like, what is their favorite snack? How do you build them up? Bring them a little joy if things get rough, because of course that happens.
I was just going to say too, I mean, don't just take our word for it. That is research based. So the Gallup organization did a bunch of research with managers and staff that talked about what retained the people that you want to keep in your business. And the number one thing, hands down, was, do I know what is expected of me at work each day? So that really lines up with kind of with our training compact, with our passport or training plan for onboarding, and that it really speaks to that retention. People want to know what is expected of them and then be given the tools and resources to be able to deliver on those expectations. So there's a book called First Break All the Rules that goes in a lot more depth about that study that was done.
Yes, I would add one more piece to that, not just to pile on, but the fourth component of that study is actually to appreciate. Have I been appreciated in the last 7 days? And so I think retention is, appreciation isn't the dollars, because in that study, and it's Maslow's rules, right? Once you have to get to a certain level before your comforts are met, before your basic expectations. But are you appreciating your staff? And in the last 7 days, have they been appreciated? And so just kind of do a mental checklist of how many of your staff have you appreciated in the last 7 days? How many of the coworkers have you appreciated specifically, intentionally, and timely? And that sort of stuff matters. It happens over at mail order where we hire a bunch of holiday staff who come back year to year to year. I mean, we're talking hundreds of mail order holiday staff, and we're getting 40 to 50% return rate during this time for a seasonal part-time staff. Like, part of the reason we're doing that is because we're intentional about the appreciations, and it's something people start to feel. And when they feel that way, they tell their friends and they tell their other people, they tell their family, and they get some of those people. And so it's a way of building the culture meets the words that you say. Like, the people are doing what they say in the interviews when they're talking about those things. And appreciation, I think, is one of the key elements.
Yeah. And we can also share, we have the consolidated list of those reasons why employees really value and enjoy where they work. And that's something that we'll share with you. And just know we're also tracking a couple other resources like the training compact. In the follow-up email, we will be giving you lots of these nuggets that we've talked about, just to say, because I don't think I said it earlier. Okay, next question, Timo, I'm gonna keep things on you here. Where might one start when trying to revamp their whole training system?
Yeah, nothing like a big question. Like, okay, we're just going to redo all of training. Like, let's start there. I mean, I could say a lot of different things, but I think we've all referenced it a lot of times. Elmian talked about it in the Gallup poll and the research there, but getting clarity on expectations. Ariana mentioned it. What are the expectations for starting? Was it your role, or is it the department, or is it across the organization? Like, what does it mean to be an employee at your business? And getting some clarity on those pieces and starting to break that down, I think, is one of the key elements, because you're starting to get that clarity so you can tell people what they're doing. This might mean redoing your job descriptions or assessing your job descriptions and saying, hey, is our job descriptions really what we want people to do? And if they are, then starting to meet and build expectations and create a document, create some tools, create some training that tells them and works them through all those components of their job description. And yes, some people say, oh my goodness, that's a lot of work. Yes, it's a significant amount of work, but to get really clear expectations, it's living that training compact, right? It's living that component and saying, within this, we're going to give you clear expectations and we're going to give you the tools to do the work. And so I think in order to be really effective, to say, I want to have a really great training program, it's starting to break down what are those things we want you to know. And then, as we do in our bottom line training content, is really thinking about what is the prioritization. I think a lot of people try to say, okay, let's train people in 2 days. We've got 2 days for orientation. Let's just push everything into their brain and say, okay, you're going to get everything. And that waterfall or fire hose training, while efficient, has been proven to not be very effective long-term, right? Because they don't know what to, I always think of it like, if you give them a coffee cup while you're using the fire hose on them and you say, okay, drink up, like, they can't keep up. It's impossible. So they're drinking random pieces. You have no idea what they've captured or learned in those 2 days. And so then you expect them to do something the next day or the next week, and they didn't get it because they didn't learn that part. And so to say, no, I want you to learn this part today and get good at it, and then do this part tomorrow, and then do this part the next day, and start to build it. It's like Legos. You have to do the first layer. You have to put out the ground piece in order to put the next piece up. You can't put the windows on first because there's no structure. And so you want to be really clear in thinking about those pieces. The other thing we talk about a lot is where to start structurally, or what things are important. And we actually have 3 classes we think are really important if you're going to do classes or have enough staff to do classes. And one is a welcome class. And a welcome class is really welcome to the business, welcome to the organization. Why do we exist, and why do we matter, and why are we different? And Ari is still the only person, Ari and Paul are the only people teaching this class. So of our 700 staff and our holiday staff, they teach this class to every single person. A CEO, founder of a business who's traveled and paid thousands of dollars to go speak in front of CEOs, is teaching right in front of a group of 10, 12, 20 people and talking about why the business exists. And I think there's a real value to that component. I think also getting clear on service, giving great service. It's not patting someone on the back and saying, go give great service, but what does it mean to give great service at your business? Like, what are those behavioral expectations? And then we referenced it earlier, but train the trainer, like taking some of the work off of you as a leader and training other people to train effectively so that there's a really effective tool. Those are really great ways to start building a training program that allows you to start to get some consistency and get the results that we're really trying to get to.
Big question with a big answer. Is there anything else that trainers have to add? All right. Thank you, Timo.
Yeah,
And good luck to who asked the question. We are here for you also.
reach out. I could talk about this for hours. So you can reach out to any of us and we can all talk about it, but we love to talk about training and putting those together.
Yes.
I would say, I mean, I would put in a little plug. Timo and I, in the beginning of December, are teaching our 2-day bottom line training seminar, and we spend a whole day on this. So, you know, if you want to revamp your entire training plan, that would be a really good investment in terms of your time and using your resources.
Yes. Okay, I believe we've heard from everyone once, so we're going to go around the room again. So Elnian, I believe we started with you. I'm going to pop it back to you. Could you tell us about an aha moment that you had while training, something that has led to greater self-awareness in how you train?
Yeah, I really like this question, in part because it was something I've been thinking about recently. Years ago, we were teaching our 2-day Art of Giving Great Service seminar, and it was to a pretty large group, like 40-45 people, which is larger than our seminars typically are. And you can imagine it's really hard to get to know and interact with everyone when the group is that big. So, you know, but we work really hard at it. We talk to people at breaks, we, you know, seek them out at lunch, you know, to try to engage, to make sure that people are getting what they're hoping for out of the seminar experience. Well, in this seminar, there was a man who was a trainer in his business taking the service seminar, and he spent the majority of the 2 days like this, right? Just like sitting back, arms crossed, not taking a single note. And at breaks, he went outside and walked around. So I didn't want to like chase him down. So I was worried. I thought he was just hating the entire experience, because affect was just very like, why am I even here? I hate this, in my interpretation. So when we got to the final debrief at the seminar, where everyone answers a couple of questions to reflect on their entire seminar experience, I was nervous because I was anticipating some like really short, terse answers that made it very clear that he didn't want to be there. And he blew me away. He had taken away so much and was visibly excited to put some of his learnings into practice in his business. So this really made something real that we talk about when we talk about the training compact, right? You heard Katie talk about that earlier, and we've referenced it a bunch, that we ask trainees to take 100% responsibility for the effectiveness of their training, and that truly only the individual really knows what that is. So this person was very much an auditory learner, so he soaked up everything that everyone said, and he didn't need to take any notes at all for him to be able to retain the information. I am very much a note taker, and until that moment, I didn't recognize how much I subconsciously expected to see that outward visual representation of learning that was aligned with the way that I learn best. So now I work really hard on letting people learn in the way that works best for them and not making assumptions about whether or not someone is learning, right? Visually, they might look to me like they're not learning anything and they're not engaged, but I don't really know what's going on upstairs. All we can do is really try to give people multiple different ways to learn, to engage the 3 different learning styles, which we've referenced but haven't said explicitly. So that is visual learners, people who learn best by seeing; auditory learners, people who learn best by hearing; and then kinesthetic learners, people who learn best by practice or motion, right? This is why note-taking or doodling is good for kinesthetic learners. This is also why we do a lot of role play in training, because we want people to be able to engage on that kinesthetic component. So we try to build that into all of our training, and stress that we want people to ask if they're not getting what they need in the training. And we can draw a diagram using our, everyone here knows, extremely bad art skills. All the other trainers are laughing because they've seen my drawing. But for a visual learner, that's what's really going to help make it click. And I'm happy to show off my embarrassing art skills if that's what it takes. So yeah, that was a big learning for me. I don't remember the person, but I'll never forget that experience.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have inspiration for an aha moment?
I do. The one, and I've seen Al work on this. I've seen that process. We've talked about this before. The other one that I got, it was in a feedback afterwards. And I still have it like taped to my wall, the actual written feedback. So I think about it. because it was an introvert who wrote in, I wish there was more space for me to think because I couldn't have time to process on my own. And so I think a lot of us, especially people who you hire as trainers, oftentimes are more extroverted because you are more comfortable in front of people. You've learned that way or such. Your kind of training is built kind of for extroverted models. Raise your hand, speak out loud, do the role play, do these things that are big and outside. And they just kind of said, where was the space for introverts? And so, and a lot of times we've done, and we start to do it. And I know I have a training coming up next week, and I would just like to donate, like giving people individual space to work on it for 3 or 4 minutes, giving people a moment as introvert brainstorm before they have a table discussion to do a little bit of space for here. Let me get my thoughts together, and then I'm more ready to have an engagement or a conversation or other thing like that. And so that to me was a really big aha, like where making sure there's a space, because it's not how I think. You can probably get that just by watching me on here. That's not how I process and engage with the world. But it was really kind of that big moment of, oh, right, there's another way, and that's really amazingly, really potentially powerful. And so trying to be really clear on that.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Okay, next up, we will go back to Jenny. What are some best practices that a manager could do before and or after sending staff to a training to help ensure that it pays off and is effective?
Ooh, good one. Thank you. So, I love this. Because one of the reasons I enjoy working here, and my kids have told me it doesn't matter what Zingerman's business I work for, I just need to stay with Zingerman's and keep bringing pickles home. But they know I love learning, and the encouragement to always train or opportunities to train is something that's very appealing for me, that I really enjoy. And I think one thing we can start with is having transparency of who is training and how trainings are chosen, so knowing staff. So sometimes I've heard staff announcements of just so-and-so is going to be off schedule this day because they're going to this training. We have Zing Train seminars, and sometimes we have CCOP staff from other Zingerman's business as participants. And I love that. The dynamic for the participants from all over the country is really wonderful. And it's great to see like training is happening right now and it's benefiting others. And then after someone returns, once we've had a transparent process, whether it's vision writing or just letting announcements to let people know, like, this is how this person got chosen, or they asked to go to this training. It wasn't just randomly chosen or my favorite got picked. So transparency there is have people bring their learnings back. And so usually it's an expectation that if you've gone to a training where you were clocked in for it, that you would bring that back just to share, like, this is what I did. Sometimes people do like PowerPoint presentations. Other times folks just say a little bit at their weekly staff meeting of this is what happened. And something that's really fun as an option is whatever they trained on to implement that as an experiment. So it's an opportunity to let the person know, like, hey, I trained something. If they get to share with others, their coworkers, then that helps them learn and retain even more. And they actually get to use those 1 to 3 things that they took from their final reflection from a workshop or seminar and actually do it. So they've met that goal. So it's helping us fulfill their end of the training compact. And I've learned things and thought, wow, I didn't know that class existed. I would love to take that class sometime. And at mail order, I was working in the service center. We have a large spreadsheet called Who Knows What. It's for a lot of tasks. We also have who's taken what class, and we just check off when we took the class. And it's amazing how many times we've gone in and said, oh, I didn't remember taking that class, but I guess I did. And that's a great time for a refresher. So transparency, keeping track of what training is going on also helps us know how much are we training or not. And then the opportunity or insight to do experiments and that kind of openness, because not every technique is going to work for every group, but it can help our neuroplasticity, our brains stay in learning mode to try different things out. And any other trainers have thoughts, would love to hear them.
I'm happy to share, to build on what you said, Jenny. One thing that we love, the TLA, the 3-letter acronym, and there's one called CREW, which you beautifully outlined, Jenny, which is The C stands for context, the R stands for reinforce, and the U stands for use. And so the context part is before someone goes to training, say, I'm going to send you this open book training, open book management seminar, and you're going to learn about how we operate with transparency around our financials. And I want you to come back with 2 new ideas that we can implement in our huddle or our weekly meeting. And then the reinforced part is when they get back, like Jenny said, you know, what are those learnings? Have them share back. What did you learn? And then the use part is hopefully within 48 hours, folks are using what they've learned so that you can have some retention around all the different aspects of what you picked up in whatever learning experience, as opposed to what often happens is like, you're going to go to this training, the staff member's like, am I in trouble? I'm going to service training. Is this a punishment? But we can provide support around, no, we believe in you. We want to invest in your development, and here's some things we want you to get out of it. So it can be a fortuitous cycle.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say it does make a little bit of sense that the collective participants don't have a ton of questions because we did ask for them in advance. But if you do have any, please feel free to put them in the Q&A if you'd like any more clarity or new things are inspired from what we're talking about here. And I'm going to, Katie, keep it on you actually. This question is kind of in the same vein. Do you recommend that long-term staff attend trainings again? And how do you think about intervals of that?
Yes, great question. Ari, our co-founder, likes to have this joke of like, if people continue, you know, a lot of times there's a lobby for, well, I've worked here for this amount of years, I should be paid more. And Ari's developed, I don't know, through some line of thinking that if you don't continue to develop yourself, you're actually worth less to the organization than if you just stay stagnant, if you're just looking at number of years. So I will say investing in your staff is really important. And you might say, well, what if they leave? But like, what if you don't invest in training and they stay? So I definitely recommend long-term staff taking classes again. It's like viewing a movie for the second time or reading a book a second time. You're in a different place and time when you view that movie again. You're going to pick different things up. There's some things that you might not have noticed the first time around, a lot of nuance. You just are in a different space and time. So there's a lot, we bring our experiences with us. We can view things differently. At the Bakehouse, when I was there, we did a renorm and renew, or I don't know, remember that we'll include it in the follow-up, but it was basically a refresh on training. And we had anyone that had worked 4 years or longer in the business retake some of our basic orientation classes, like the Art of Giving Great Service, our finance class, and the Welcome to the Organization class that Timo discussed earlier. And it was a way for them, those classes had all been updated since they started working in the organization. So they got to see the update, they got to connect with new staff members in the organization, and they heard the information in a new space and time. And in terms of what intervals, I would say that there's not a hard and fast rule. And whether it is retaking basic orientation classes or focusing on some form of development, learning keeps things fresh, keeps the learner's mindset or the growth mindset, as opposed to like, oh no, I've got it figured out. And then making sure that folks have an opportunity to share back with the rest of the group what they learned as a way to reinforce their learning and also communicate. We believe that investing and developing our staff is important. So hopefully that answers. Happy to have anyone else add in.
I was just going to add too, I mean, the other benefit of it is that having longtime staff in training that new employees are attending really adds to the depth of the conversation in the class, because the longtime staff are sharing their experiences and their perspectives. So that it's not just a trainer telling you what you're supposed to do. It's also people who've worked here for a long time saying, this is actually how it is. And here are examples of what this really looks like in practice. that I always love it when longtime staff join specifically the training classes or the customer service classes, because it's a much more rich experience, I think, for the trainees.
Thank you so much. I'll add that a training I did yesterday at Mail Order Warehouse, where we had arranged, some staff have taken that class so many times, the art of giving great service, and still took new things away. And the newer staff get to see that and say, wow, because at the beginning they were like, you've taken this class 12 times. Yes. And then at the end, they get to see, wow, you still got things out of it. It wasn't a punishment. It was actually a growth experience. And then when I mentioned earlier, those opportunities for staff to talk with each other and have that kind of exposure therapy for communication, that was one of those opportunities. We had mixed groups, role plays together, and hearing how does good service make you feel in the different voices really what goes a long way.
Thank you all. Okay, I have 3 questions left in my hopper. So I'm gonna pass things over to Joni. We talked very early on that we offer in-person and virtual trainings here at ZingTrain. And so this question is, what do you think are real advantages to remote training? And what do you think are some of its losses relative to our in-person experience?
That's a really good question. And it's one that we've talked about a lot over the past almost 2.5 years. Prior to 2020, we were a 100% in-person training business. When people asked us if we could do virtual training, it was like, no, we're in person. That's what we do best. But realizing kind of in the last 2 years, that's almost all we could do for about 18 months was train virtually. So we really learned to embrace it. We designed all of our virtual training based on the in-person training. So it has a lot of the same elements to still feel like a really great ZingTrain experience that people are used to. And I think the advantages to virtual or remote training is it really allows people to access our training who maybe wouldn't have been able to before, whether that was due to logistics or timing or expense. I think of people who live in California, for them to come to Michigan for a day of training, that's almost 3 days worth. By the time you add travel before and travel afterwards, doing virtual, it becomes 1 day, right? So you get some time back. And so virtual just makes it more accessible in really all of those areas. The loss compared to in-person training, I think the biggest thing is that when you're in person, you're able to disconnect from the day-to-day work in a different way. I think you can engage in a deeper way sometimes because you don't have the temptation of having your email open next to the Zoom or looking at your phone. It's easier virtually than it is when you're in person because you stow it away. So you connect differently. We will never not love in person, and we've learned to really embrace the virtual. And we love hosting people here in Ann Arbor. We love being with people in person in their organization. And we really love when people trust us to train their teams remotely.
Thank you, Joni.
Yeah.
Okay, Ariana. We are trying to keep all our internal documents and training consistent. Does one person own this? How do you share this with managers and the team?
Yes. The question around consistency, I think it kind of depends on what you're looking for consistent. One of the important things is having a consistent place that the resources are kept, where people know where to go when they need the resources. So for example, Zingerman's is 10 different businesses. We do not have one person who manages all the training for all of those businesses. Each business has their own, I don't know, they all take responsibility for it. There are different trainers, but they all have a place where the passports are kept. These are the training plans. You can go here for those. We do have a committee. It's called the training engineers, who are not in charge, but champions of training, making sure that things are going smoothly, being there when a new manager comes in and says, where do I start? Being able to direct folks. And at the same time, Jenny can answer this more. When mail order first started really documenting SOPs, they did have a champion who was in charge of building that structure. So I think it can depend if you can have a champion or a couple of champions who build that structure, then more people can tie in. Before I hand it to you, there was one other thing that I wanted to say, which is that part of the power and really effective training is having the conversation with the people who are actually doing the work. So I wouldn't say like, oh, have one person who's in charge of it, because they're probably not doing all of the jobs. You need some kind of meet in the middle of a champion who's making sure things go forward, and the people who are actually doing the work who can say, this is how we actually do this job. Here are the priorities in our day-to-day. You gotta keep those conversations flowing. Jenny, do you want to say more about like the mail order, bringing all that into the database?
Yeah, I can't even, so we do have that shared space, and we've learned it's so key also to have common agreement on how documents are named so that they can be found. We have an A to Z list so that you can find them by always the title of the document matches the title of the SOP. And we have auditing as a regular task. So the expectation is these aren't top-down documents for everyone else to follow. It is our job to continuously be auditing. Sometimes we find typos. Sometimes we find things have changed and they need to be updated in the SOP. And sometimes we find a better way to do things. And usually that's a new person who just like brings something out of nowhere. And so we all own our task boards, which is how we get through our shifts. And we also have shared responsibility for the SOPs. And I have to say, I love SOPs. It's how I was able to onboard with my limited memory capacity at times, especially when things are really busy. It keeps things consistent. Yeah.
Katie, did we get to all the aspects of that question? Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Okay. Final question is for Timo Anderson. Oh, hold on one moment, please. What are the 3 most important things to make a training effective?
So I saw this question and I had to think about it because I got very particular about the language to make a training. So I kind of moved this into the like a specific training of a concept. So a specific entity. So whether it's an on-shift situation or a class, but really thinking about a singular situation, not training in general. And I'm assuming most of you would be able to say the first one, which is get clear objectives, get really clear understanding of what you're trying to do, to make sure you are doing that and say, this is what we're going to do in this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. Because it's very easy for any one of us to go down those rabbit holes in the middle of a training that get exciting and whatever else, and just say, no, this is the objective. This is what I'm going to teach. This is what we're going to work on. Whether it's, documented, written, whatever it is, verbalized, written, told to that employee so they know what to be focusing on and know what they're trying to get done. I think a second really key element is getting prepared. We've talked about that in lots of different ways, but if it's a one-on-one training, do you know how that person writes to learn? Do you know that their learning style? Do you know, like Jenny says, she wants it in writing? Do you know that they're left-handed? Do you know that they like to do kinesthetic learning? What do you know about that person? When we're all doing trainings out in the wild, so to speak, we try to get as much information about the room as possible. What's the room set up? How are they going to go? So getting clear and having all those things there. There's nothing worse than doing the middle of training. You're trying to make tomato soup and you're like, oh, I forgot. We have to go down and get the cans of tomatoes from the stock room. Like that's not making the soup. That's getting the materials and getting your mise en place ready. And so getting really prepared and making sure you have everything there. Not searching for them and kind of doing that. Oh, we're going to do this. And then you go 3 steps backwards and then another 3 steps backward. And you told them it was making soup, but you end up getting all the prep and they run out of time to actually make the soup because you spend the hour that they're supposed to do training and doing the preparation. The third thing, and this is one of those keys, and we highlight it, and Elman and I will talk about it in our 2-day training a lot, is doing the training at full speed first. This is one of those things that we have learned. If you're showing something to someone, do it full speed first. It's going to surprise them. And you can say, this is full speed. We understand you're not going to get here, but we want you to get here eventually. Show them how you do it full speed and then go back and break it down and do it slowly is really key and elemental in kind of setting in their brain the end expectation for how that's going to work. For Stephanie's question that she asked, I think to add a fourth element, I know it's only supposed to do three, but the fourth one is really to start to reward in ways you can think about, can they move on or do they have to do it again? Right? That's a built-in reward or recognition that you don't have to do anything for you. Oh, you get to do something new. You don't have to do the same thing every single time. Doing it on their own, like not having to be kind of managed and watched and observed, being able to say, I can do this on my own, is another really great tool for recognition and reward. And then finally, the possibility for upward momentum, right? As Elnine talked about, she was able to train at mail, like she was able to train really early at mail order. Jenny gets excited about training. Ariana was training at the deli. So we're all doing these little things. And so that's an opportunity. If you're not doing those things that you're expected to, the opportunity for other things, that reward or recognition that you're really good and we want you to train others, isn't going to be available. So those are free recognition rewards that can be put in place.
Yeah. Thank you, Timo. That's a really great question because it kind of rounds up a lot of what we've been talking about throughout the whole, I did not plan that, but it works very nicely. So it is noon. I really want to respect everyone's time here. I have a couple of things that I think you're going to want to hear if you can stick around for just another moment. And then we will all say goodbye. I appreciate all of you for joining us on this call. We had like a steady amount of people. There wasn't really any drop off for the whole hour, which I just want to say is like, I'm glad that this resonated with you and that everyone was able to meet and get some questions answered. Just thank you. I had a really great time. Okay, so I first want to just thank all of our trainers. It is not easy for us all to get together in the same room at the same room at the same time. I really appreciate you all coming together, being peppered with questions and sharing your wisdom and experience with everyone. Mara and Alice, I also want to thank you both for rocking out the chat all hour and keeping tabs on all of our participants. They have also been at work. They've randomly selected our virtual workshop seat winners. We promised that we would be giving out 6 free seats, 1 for each of our trainers here. And so I apologize in advance for mispronunciation, but our winners are Shauna Lee, Klaus Reichert, who is joining us from Germany. So that's extra great that you get a virtual seat. Justina Marcial, Matt Varela, Diana Underwood, and Philip Johnson. And we will send you all, congratulations. We'll send you an email with details on how you can claim your prize. And because we think that you're all winners here, we are also going to extend a discount of $45 on our next virtual workshop. It's coming up next Thursday, October 6th, and it is the 5 steps to effective on-shift training. And the discount code is 5 steps, the number 5, STEPS. And you all asked so many questions about employee training. We thought that this was a great opportunity if some of you wanted to dive in a little more and just get a taste of what on-shift training, how we teach it, and how it, we just think it could be really beneficial for many of you based on your curiosities. It'll be right back here in Zoom land, and we will be putting, Mara did, a link in the chat. And you can click that to read more about the product, and the discount will be automatically applied when you check out. And also this discount code, this recording of the webinar and additional resources is going to go in an email to you also. So got a lot of information, but you will receive it all again in your inbox. We also would love to hear what you thought of today's webinar. We have a quick evaluation, and that will also be in the chat. You can click on that. We would love to hear what you thought and any ideas that you have for future webinars. So look out for the email be coming your way. You absolutely can share this recording with anyone. It will also live on our website. It is a free resource for the world. Okay, well, have a great rest of your day, everyone. This was really, really fun, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank
Hey,
you.
thanks, Katie.